really didn't plan to preach on this morning, but I don't know how to explain it to you, but this is just what the Lord gave me last night late, and I was working on something else. And, Seth and I don't talk a whole lot during the week, this time or two or three maybe, in between services, but we don't plan things out. I don't say, now, what are you going to, we're going to preach on this next Sunday, but I trust the Lord does that. A lot of the time, what he talks about's got a lot to do with what I'm going to talk about, and it's kind of that way this morning. This is also going to go along with what I preached on a couple of weeks ago about the worm dieth not. About being how much wisdom is much sorrow, and the things that we talked about then. But this is the book of Genesis. We're only to chapter 6 here, where we're going to read this morning, but it's the book of beginnings, and so there's a lot of things that are laid out in the first of Genesis here that are sound throughout history of the human race. It's just the way things happen. It's the way sin affects the human race individually and as a whole. And that's what we see here in Genesis 6. This is the days of Noah. This is when God's going to destroy the world with a flood. And he did. And it's a fact. And, he did it. Whether you understand it or not, it doesn't matter. He did. And he's God, and he had good reason to. Let's read these scriptures out. I just want to read verses 4 through 7. And then I'll refer back a little bit, maybe to some of the previous verses. But let's read it. There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. All right. So the end begins when the sons of God start looking at the daughters of men and then lying with women that care nothing and know nothing about God. Just mark that right down to start with. Apostasy begins there. The spiritual, moral decline of a nation, a people, of the whole world as a whole. Individual. It starts right there. The thing about morals, sexual morality between men and women is the pillar of all morality. When that is kicked out from under, the whole house falls. You can look at the recent history and see it. I've seen it happen in my lifetime. I've observed it happen from, I remember, a different world where there were morals, where you say, well, there's always been. Yeah, there's always been, but no, it hasn't been the norm. It hadn't been the accepted way. There were boundaries. There was right and wrong where there is none now. In almost all areas. And it started there. Just about 60 years ago. So, we've watched this happen. This is happening in Genesis here. Sons of God. Always mark this. I've read a lot and known a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of crazy ideas about this scripture right here, and especially these words, sons of God saw the daughters of men. In our study of the Bible and its history, we're going to get to that eventually, but the Bible is its own dictionary. You can define everything from the Bible, and that's your safe place to do it from. Sons of God, just do a study on it very simply. Just take your concordance, take your phone, your computer, search it. Sons of God in the Bible, and you will find that it always refers to the people of God in this world. It's not talking about angels or aliens or Nephilim or anything like that. That's all kooky nonsense that's come out of hell on this last generation, and they've swallowed it all as truth. It's always got to be something superstitious, something fascinating, something mystical. This is just plain old King's English here. The children of God, the people who were known as the sons of God. We this morning, if you're saved here, if you're born again, you are one of the sons of God. To as many as believed on him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. The Bible's full of it. And it explains it every time that that's what it is. It's not angels. Angels didn't come to earth and breed with human females and create a race of giants. That's nonsense. There were giants in the earth before this started. You read the Bible and take it for what it says. Quit reading and listening to reels that tell you all kinds of kooky nonsense. You misunderstand the whole thing. You don't understand nothing of what this is talking about. The sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Well, it refers to those who fear and serve God, and the daughters of men refer to the women that are born of the people of this world that care nothing for God. There were giants in the earth in those days. Certainly, there were giants in the physical sense. There were giant lizards and giant crickets and giant fish and giant everything. Before the flood, everything was bigger. And they still digging bones everywhere out of the ground from before the flood that were giant. Everything grew better before the flood. The earth yielded better. I mean, everything was different before the flood. There were giants in the earth in those days. But giants doesn't mean only large in size. There were men who feared and served God. They were the sons of God. See, listen to me. Stay with me. Before this started, this decline that happened very quickly here, there were the sons of God. And then there were the daughters of men. There were the people of the world. There were the sons of men and there were the sons of God. So there were two different distinct classes of people who acted different, who saw things different, who thought different. The world wasn't filled with evil and violence then. Before the sons of God left their place, left their post, and took to them the women of the world and threw all of morality out the window, there were two different peoples in the world. And there were people who didn't think evil continually. There were people whose every imagination of the thoughts of their heart was not evil continually. But it sure turned that way quick. Yes, sir. Just like it has in our day. My grandparents didn't think like everybody thinks now, like we think. We're so polluted with it because we won't leave it alone that we think evil all the time. I'm not saying everybody's got a dirty mind and everybody's just thinking all that. No, it's the evil, the trouble, the strife, the hatred, the conflict, the constant thing. That's what I want to talk about this morning. But the people who feared and served God, they always produce giants in whatever field they're in. You know, giant also has this definition in Webster's dictionary. It's a person of extraordinary strength or powers, bodily or intellectual. So, a giant. He's a giant in his field, you know, some guy that's educated. He knows a lot more. He's skilled in the knowledge of that trade or whatever it is. Profession. The greatest men that have ever lived on this earth have been God-fearing men. The ones who excel the most have been that kind of a man. Yes. The people who are identified as the sons of God, they have always been that way. God produces giants in His family. Great men. Great men. Now these men naturally drew the attention of the daughters of men who cared not about God and knew nothing of Him. Now see, we talk about, the Bible teaches us in the New Testament, be not unequally yoked with unbelievers. And that's a big thing to me when two people get married and one of them says they're saved and one of them says they're not. One of them cares for God and one of them doesn't. You're unequally yoked. And it is not. I'll tell you how it's going to work. Your children are going to be ungodly. They're not going to care for God either. It's going to take a miracle for it to turn out any other way than that. People have a lot of preachers have a lot of restrictions on who they'll marry and won't. Well, that's one of my big things right there. If you're not both profess to be saved and you're going to live for God and you're going to pattern your marriage and your home after God's order, then I can't have a part in that. I don't want to unequally yoke people together, knowingly. And so, when they began to pay attention, when the sons of God started to pay attention to the daughters of men because they were fair, of course. Ain't nothing will get the attention of a man better than that will. Everybody knows it, don't they? That's why there's a woman on every advertisement, I've seen women selling chainsaws. Like, what's that? Women totally out of place, but they're there for the sole purpose of catching the eye of men and getting them to look. And so they began to pay attention to him. The next step was that they came in unto them, and they bare children unto them. Now the Bible doesn't tell us here that they married them. Now in verse 2, it does say wives, took them wives. But the Bible doesn't tell us they married them in the sense of holy matrimony. They just came in unto them. Like shacking. The Bible word is fornication. And I don't want to chase rabbits here this morning. The Bible word for it is chambering, cohabitating without being legally married, not without the commitment. In verse 2, the word wives is used, but the definition of a concubine makes it clear that they were considered wives also. Did you know that? That they called a concubine a wife, but she really wasn't. Listen to what it says. A concubine is a woman who cohabits with a man without the authority of a legal marriage. A woman kept for lewd purposes. You want to be one of those women? You want your daughters to be one of those kind of women? Let me tell you something. Every woman that'll shack with a man without any kind of promise or any kind of commitment from him needs to understand that she's just being kept for that. She's just being kept for that. And then women do that because they're empowered and they're liberated. No, not so. You're really demeaning yourself. So the second definition means a wife of inferior condition. A lawful wife, but not united to the man by the usual ceremonies. This is important why I'm saying this. And of inferior condition. Such were Hagar. She was called the wife of Abraham in Genesis 16:3. And Keturah was the woman that Abraham married later in life after Sarah died. She's called a concubine in 1 Chronicles 1:32. How about that? So it was kind of interchangeable. There's a difference between the wife of thy youth. Thy wife. When Rebekah became Isaac's wife, that meant they became one. That she was his wife. Sarah was Abraham's wife. She's never called a concubine. There's a shady area there. These men took them wives, and when you look up that word and what it really means in that verse right there, it means a broad sense, a woman. It means a woman. They took them women. I've never been comfortable calling my wife woman. You know, woman, do this. Woman, come here. Woman, do this. I never introduced her as, this is my woman. Don't you think that's a little bit... No, this is my wife. There's a difference. These men took women. The daughters of men didn't have to be forced. They were willing. Had no shame or fear about that kind of life. Just like the daughters of men do now. All right, we're in the last days. Now, this is important because this is what happened in the beginning. This is the first apostasy that we see, besides the fall into sin, the fall in the garden. And I don't like calling it the fall either. They didn't fall, they chose. They sinned willingly. But anyway, the daughters of men didn't have to be forced. It was like that then. It's like that now. It's pretty well always been that way. Women who do not care for God or know about God, know God, they don't have any morals. This universal abandonment of the sanctity of holy matrimony produced a generation of children who grew up to be mighty men, the Scripture tells us then, who became men of renown. And renown means fame. It means like a celebrity. It means exalted. It means having a reputation derived from the extensive praise of great achievements or accomplishments. So there were men who were famous, like the celebrities we see today. The society before the flood was a celebrity society, just like we have. I mean, where we worship movie stars and singers and sports stars, and they have. It don't matter how wicked and vile they are. It doesn't matter how low life they are, how ignorant they are, how ungodly they are. They're still held in high esteem. It doesn't matter if they can't spell their name. They've got wisdom in politics and everything else. Everybody listens to it. Why would you listen to people like that? But that's how it was back then. They were mighty men, men of renown. And like almost all the celebrities today, they were immoral and carnal, ungodly people who lived like feral animals and not at all like their grandfathers who were sons of God. Get that? Their grandfathers were called sons of God. But 2 generations, and look where we're at. Before the flood. It happens that way. It just happens that way every time. So far, the story sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, the next thing we read immediately after that, those facts are given to us, and then we read that God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth. Boy, it changed quickly, didn't it? And that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Well, it doesn't take long. Just 1 generation or 2, and the whole thing escalates into a universal calamity for humanity. Well, you think we're in any kind of predicament like that right now? All the world. Doesn't matter if they're churched or unchurched, if they're Jews or Christians or Muslims or the whole world knows that we're in for something big. Everybody's anticipating some great calamity like has never been, and they're not going to be disappointed. It's coming. We all know it. Because it's like today with the storms coming. I went out this morning and the air, the way it felt, the wind, and I remember days like this before. And I remember what happened. And so when I go out and I sense the same atmosphere, I think I know what's coming, what is likely to come. And it's the same way with this. When the moral climate is like this, then you can expect what happens to these people to come next, because there's a God in heaven who just lets things go so far, and he judges. He puts a stop to it. Evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse. But a few verses before that it says they shall proceed no farther. They'll go so far and God stops them. Like Sodom and Gomorrah. What was wrong with that place? Well, the men in Sodom were sinners exceedingly before the Lord. And the cry of Sodom went up to heaven. And God heard it in heaven. And so he came down to destroy that city. And he did. And other cities as well. The cities, all the cities of the plain, because they were all doing the same things. So it doesn't take long. Once the moral law of God is made null and void, the process is immediately began. And it's like a runaway train on a steep mountain. There ain't no stopping it. You see, evil, and I've tried to explain this before, but evil is the product of sin. We think of sin and evil as being the same word, synonymous. It's not. Evil is trouble. Evil is hatred and strife and murder and bloodshed and, evil. The no happiness, no peace. The wicked are like the troubled sea that cannot rest, throwing up mire and mud. That's evil. That's caused by man's sin. Evil is the product of sin. We think of it as synonymous, but evil is the result of sin and not really the sin itself. But it's like a snowball in that evil produces more sin, which results in more evil. What do men do? If you do something to hurt them, what do? They hurt you back. Well, then what do you got to do? Well, you got to hit swing at them. You got to punch them. You got to do something for them. Men do that between individuals. Nations do that between each other. Nations get together and form alliances, and they all do it to each other. I mean, wham! All right, you did that. Here it comes back at you. Bam! Evil breeds more evil, produces more evil, produces more sin, which produces more evil. To me, that's pretty easy to understand and observe. Evil is it's either natural or moral. Natural evil is anything which produces pain, distress, loss, or calamity, or which in any way disturbs the peace, impairs the happiness, or destroys the perfection of natural beings. So evil, see, before sin entered into the world, the Garden of Eden was a wonderful, peaceful place where nobody hurt anybody. No animal hurt any other animal. God didn't create a world full of strife and killing and hating and eating one another. God didn't create it that way. Sin made it that way, full of evil. And the only restraint on evil in this world is the Spirit of God and the Spirit and the Word of God. We are the salt of the earth, Jesus told us. We're the light of the world. And if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under the feet of men. If we get to where we're just like them, then there's no restraint on evil. So how'd this world get in this place that it's in? The sons of God saw the daughters of men. They looked at the world around them, and there's just too much enticement and too much appealing, and they reached for it and took it, and their children abandoned God altogether. And now the restraint on evil is very, very weak in this world. It's a spiritual battle. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. See, we got it all wrong. We're always fighting carnal. We're using carnal weapons. We come up with plans and schemes and programs and everything to, make it look like we're doing something. What we got to do, are you listening? Amen. We got to live for God in this world around us now. We got to separate from this evil that's around us. Separate our mind. Not just put on a uniform to wear, or start wearing a badge or a necklace or something that identifies you as a Christian. You got to stop being like them. Stop thinking like them. You got to get that evil out of your mind. Charity thinketh no evil. That means your mind ain't full of anger and frustration and confusion all the time because of the people around you. You can drive down the highway without throwing a hissy fit, getting mad at people. See, that's what, that's silly, sounds like, but that's how it was in the days of Noah. People just hated one another. Everybody was against one another. Everybody was watching out for each other because everybody's going to hurt everybody. Ain't no restraints anymore. The knowledge of God is gone. Noah and his family are it. That's all that's left in a dark world. And so every imagination of the thoughts of men's hearts was only evil continually. It doesn't mean that they were thieves and whoremongers and stuff. That's all they thought about. That's not what that means at all. Their thoughts were of evil, just trouble. What's the big problem nowadays? Mental illness. It's people's minds are just broken and full of hatred and confusion and they don't know anything anymore. They're just so messed up. And paranoia always goes with it. See, you got to watch everybody. Got to watch everybody. You got to carry a weapon at all times. You got to be on your guard at all times. I remember when the world wasn't like that. I remember when the world was not like that. The stuff, we're overrun with thieves, evil. You can't, look how hard it is to get in. We got our computers and we got our phones and our devices, and that's how we pay our bills and everything now. And every time you go in there, you got to have your password and you got to have a username, and it never works. I have a program that keeps track of them that does it automatically. It works this month, go next month, don't work. You go round and around and around. Every place you go to, log into, you put in your password and your username, and then they'll send you a text with a number in it that you got, or an email, and you got to get that number and then put it in before you can get in. And a lot of times there's more than that. It's like everything is locked down and you can't get anywhere. And I've told you this before, but less than 35 years ago, we didn't have cell phones or anything. I could go anywhere. I remember at a payphone in Laredo, Texas, calling home, and I just pick up the payphone, dial 0. Operator, come on. Yes, can I help you? Yes, I'd like to make a long distance call and charge it to my home phone number. Okay, what's your home phone number? I'd give it to her. She said, now what number do you want to call? I'd give it to her. Call go through. I didn't have to tell her who I was, didn't have to give her any blood or DNA or swear. That's the world. That's the way it was then. And now it's certainly not that way, is it? Evil has increased exponentially, right? And we've just said like the frog in the pot. slowly warming up in it, and we got used to it. We don't even understand. We have trouble remembering a world where it wasn't this way. Well, I imagine they did too. Because before the sons of God left their place, before they dropped the ball, before they turned away from God chasing the women of the world, they had the same kind of world. But it opened the floodgates for the evil to take over. All wickedness, all crimes, all violation of law and right are moral evils. Diseases are natural evils, but they often proceed from moral evils. Y'all get that? Crime, wickedness, thieves, all violations of law and right are moral evil. But diseases are natural evil, but they often proceed from moral evils. A lot of the diseases we have are because of the moral failure of our whole country. That's why everybody's got stomach problems all the time. You go eat in these fast food places, and you know what happens. Unclean. So Satan's promise to Eve in the garden is still the devil's best plan. It's his best game to play with the men of all ages. Promise them freedom and happiness with no rules. Do what you want, when you want, where you want, with anybody you want. Don't mind anybody else. You are God and you got rights above everybody else. Don't worry about everybody else's rights. Just worry about your own. What about my rights? My rights. What about everybody else's rights? That's morality. That's why God gave the moral law. Had to be. When there's more than one person on the face of the earth, there has to be moral law. Or they'll hurt each other. Promise them freedom and happiness with no rules, and what they get in reality is pain and distress and loss and calamity and no peace in their lives. Then life becomes about hurting others before they hurt you. You've heard people take the golden rule that Jesus gave and turn it around. Do unto others before they do unto you. Now that's the devil's version of the golden rule. More people live by that than they do by what Jesus said, don't they? Or avenging yourself on others for the evil they've done to you. That's what life becomes about. You know anybody that lives like that? They're just always fighting with somebody. Always somebody's the devil. Always somebody is out to get them. They're at war all the time with somebody. Somebody different all the time. Some of them may stay at war with all their life. When that is the near universal condition of the individuals, the politics and the powers that be, they're going to manifest the same evil. But they do it with strategy and planning and purpose. Everybody wants to complain about our government and the things they're doing and all of that. They're doing just like everybody else is doing. They're doing just like you're doing. All these people that do the complaining, I'm going to tell them, they're doing just what you do. Only they got more power to do it with. See, that's what's wrong. We're all that way. And when we're all that way, the government's going to be that way. And I'm not saying that literally, that we're all that way. I'm just saying the general, the climate, the prevailing spirit, the prevailing attitude and actions of people are what I'm talking about. That's the way it is. There have always been wars, but not until the past 111 years ago, World War I started. World War I. First time. World War. 111 years ago. And then 22 years later, we had World War II. And World War III is spooling up right now. Evil is increasing exponentially. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. That's verse 13, Genesis 6. Every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That happened in 2 generations. I mean, that happened from grandpa to grandson. That's how fast the world got in that condition. A lot of people nowadays don't even know who their grandpa was, don't have a grandpa or grandma. I think that's a very sad thing. And it's part of the devil's strategy. See, he's unplugged them. He has disconnected them from who they are and where they come from. And so that's a big advantage to keep them under his control. So every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That don't mean that they were simply immoral and drunkards and thieves and moral. The moral cancer was much more advanced than that. It does mean that there was nothing but bitterness and clamor and wrath and anger and railing and hatred and strife and conflict and malice, injustice and violence in that world just before the flood. You recognize any of those words in any other verses in the Bible? I do. People were universally foolish, disobedient, deceived, serving divers lusts and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful and hating one another. That's in Titus 2. Paul talking about we also were sometimes foolish, disobedient, deceived, serving divers lusts and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful and hating one another. That's how it is without God. People don't love each other without God. They hate each other. And they're hateful toward each other. Matthew 24, verse 37, Jesus said, "And as were the days of Noah, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man." How can anyone deny that we're almost in the same condition now? Morally, spiritually, socially, every way you look at it. How can anyone deny that we're in close to the same position? Not only evil continually, but Jesus said they were marrying and giving, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. So life was going on, in spite of all the evil around them, in spite of the fact that the world was that way. But it's just like Seth was talking this morning, you know, you go in Dollar General and see how many happy faces you see. It's going to be unusual. Go in Walmart. Drive down the road. Look at the world around us as the bombs drop and the missiles fly. It ain't just over there. There's other places where it's happening too. They just don't talk about them. They just talk about one at a time. They don't tell you about everything. And then next week it may be about some old lady that was kidnapped and that nobody ever heard of. And take all the news for that. While the bombs still fall and the missiles still fly and the people still being butchered and killed. But we just don't talk about that. Here's what I wonder. What does God from heaven see? What does God hear from this earth right now? The cry. I read the other day, and I'll not get the figures exactly right here because I'm just winging it on this one, but I read the other day that in all the wars that mankind has fought through all of the ages, he's killed a little over 1 billion people. Man has killed. But it said that since 1973, there's been more than 1 billion babies killed through abortion. And see, who knows? Who knows that? Whoever thinks about it. I'll tell you who knows. God knows. The blood of that innocent blood cries out to the ground just like it did when Abel was murdered by his brother. God hears it from heaven. God heard the cry of Sodom, and he did something about it. And you better believe that God in heaven's hearing now. Hearing the cries of all these people who are being kidnapped and disappear and sold and no telling what else is being done in this evil world. And they're worrying about what happened 200 years ago to one race of people. What about now? Bunch of hypocrites, fools. And fools listen to them. And fools swallow that garbage that they tell them that's full of lies and nonsense and evil. Listen to the public dialogue on the news among the leaders of the nations and our lawmakers who are supposed to be serving the people. You see, everybody's into their politics and everything, but I remember when there was some dignity. You know, people that were a president or a senator or a judge, there's another word they were called besides politician, and it's like two different things. A politician's one thing, but a statesman is somebody else. It's somebody that cares, that's really in it for the right reason. And, you know, even when it got to where they weren't in it for the right reason, they still showed dignity for the office, for the position they're in. Listen to the dialogue now. And it's not just Trump. It's not just Trump. Everybody wants to talk about Trump. Listen to the rest of them. Are they being nice to each other? Does any of them ever have a kind word for one another? Does anybody ever try to get along and for the good of the country and the good of the people, try to work together? Forget it. You seen the State of the Union message, and you seen what happened. Some of it. I didn't watch it. I watched a little bit and seen the highlights of it. You seen what happened? Nobody's willing to give an inch. We are polarized. That is evil. That's the work that sin has brought about, that kind of evil on us. And we're in big trouble because of it. We're paralyzed. There's nothing but evil and talk of evil and thoughts of evil. When has there ever been a time when men and women were so universally full of evil as they are now, besides the world before the flood? When? There hasn't been. When has there ever been a time when there was so much hatred and violence from the top to the bottom of all classes of humanity? On the highways, road rage. You get yourself killed out there and not even know that you did anything. Because people are angry and just full of hatred and they just want to kill something or somebody. In the schools. The schools are locked down now. Used to, you could just go up and walk into school. Parent could go to the school. Anybody could come to school, walk through the doors and go in. Not now. There's bars, there's locks, there's guards, there's fences. Ain't it a wonderful world? In the churches, you know, here 7, 8 years ago, maybe not even that long, 6, 7 years ago, down there in Texas, that guy went in that church and shot everybody in the church, 50-some people, and just shot them like hogs in a trap. But since then, what has happened since then? Well, the churches figured out we need some guns too. So now the churches all have security. They have armed guards, trained people. They are watching. And so now when they try it, what usually happens to them? When somebody tries to come into church and shoot up at the place, what usually happens now? Well, they die before they can get much done. Well, I'm glad for that, because that's better than sitting there and everybody getting shot. You know, made up my mind a long time ago that ain't going to happen, not without a fight. Not where I'm at. But anyway, that's the evil. That's the world we live in. Didn't used to be that way. The churches weren't even ever locked. Anybody could go to the church anytime, come in and pray or anything. Can't leave it open now. They'll come in and throw trash all in it. They'll come in and cook meth in it. They'll steal whatever's laying loose in it. They'll just desecrate it and defile it and destroy it just for the fun of it. In the malls, in the homes, yeah, even in our very homes, there's as much hatred and bloodshed and murder and violence and immorality and evil done against the children that if we knew half of what was going on right here around us, we'd be sick at our stomachs this morning. You know what the cops have to deal with more than anything else? Domestic violence. They get called to homes where some guy's beating the devil out of a woman or killed somebody, his mother, his wife, his children, all of them. Our homes are full of that. Genesis 6 verse 8 says this, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." Now this is the hope and the answer we can all cling to in this evil time. Listen to me. I've been awful negative. But listen to me. It's not like there's any hope. Not any hope. It's not like that, man, it's this darkness and fear and all that. No, we're not to be afraid. We're not to despair. When you see these things begin to come to pass, Jesus said, "Lift up your heads, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh." Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. In the midst of all this evil, Noah heard the voice of God. Noah had the favor of God. Noah had the protection of God, the guidance of God, the wisdom of God. And you know how he did it? He stayed out of the world. You hear me? That's why he did it. He wasn't down there with them. He didn't talk their lingo. He wasn't one of them. He belonged to God. We're in the world, but we're not of the world. It's a different thing to be kind to these people all around us. There's never an excuse for a Christian to be unkind to anybody. Now that ought to be our nature. You shouldn't have to be told that and forced into it or shamed into it. There's hope. Noah found grace in such a time as this, and he was not a part of the sin and evil around him and his family. Noah didn't think like them. His mind wasn't on what their mind was on. He didn't look at them the way they looked at him. Noah kept himself and his family separated from the evil of the world around him. Noah's heart was not full of malice or envy or hatred. Noah was a preacher of righteousness, the Bible tells us in 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 5. How could he be going around paranoid and thinking about, like everybody else was thinking? And he didn't desire to see the whole world perish. He wasn't one of them that said, I'd like to call down fire out of heaven and devour this bunch. The disciples said that to the Lord, remember? He said, you don't know what spirit you're of. What in the world's the matter with you guys? I've heard preachers say from the pulpit that they'll take all the sodomites and put them on an island out there and drop a nuke on it. Well, that sounds really brave and big, don't it? From this side and in this world. But it don't sound right from heaven, I'll tell you that right now. You know not what spirit you're of. That's the kind of spirit that was ruling the world then. You and I don't have to be like the world around us and allow our minds to think evil continually. You don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. I can gird up the loins of my mind. I can guard my heart. I can watch my spirit. and I can control things. I don't have to let the devil take the reins. Say, think about this, think about that. But that's what I do if I allow him, if I've got a screen in front of my face all the time. Unless I'm purposely looking at something that's not from the devil, you're going to get all kinds of trash from hell. And you're going to be thinking about it. And then it's in your mind. And then it's in a folder there where he can just pull it up anytime and say, remember this? Ha ha ha. That's the thing about pornography. See, you look at it, it's there forever. You don't forget. You may stop thinking about it, but the devil can pull it out anytime and say, there you go. Remember that one? It's important stuff. If we're saved, the Spirit of God comes into our soul. And the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. No matter what the world around us is like, can we live as a Christian in a world like this and have peace in our minds and hearts, really have a sound mind and live in hope, rejoice in hope, waiting on the promise of his coming? Yes! That's what Noah did. Noah waited. He knew. Build an ark. And he got with it. Some people said it took him 120 years. Maybe it did. I wouldn't argue and I wouldn't be dogmatic about it, but I can't imagine him fooling around for 120 years in a world like that when God said, I'm fixing to destroy this place. The Bible tells us in the New Testament, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 7. I believe he got right on it. What could you build in 120 years? And he said, well, all he had was hammers and hand tools. How do you know that? And what in the world makes you think that it was like that? I don't believe for a minute that the world that then was like that. If one day soon, Jesus will come. Some golden daybreak, Jesus will come. And we will be glad we withdrew from the evil of this world and exercised our mind to think on things that are true and honest and just and pure and lovely and of good report. Philippians 4:8. Instead of all the evil that is around us and finding ourselves overcharged with it. Everybody's angry. It's like you said in Sunday school. There's so many people that are just angry. And there's so many that are unapproachable. I find lots of people to talk to. Anywhere I go, I can find somebody and strike up a conversation. And, sometimes those people that look angry, they're not as unapproachable as they appear to be. But their mind is vexed. Their soul is vexed with the evil. Remember that. Maybe I look like that sometimes. You said, do children smile at you? Well, I thought, that was a comfort to me. Because usually if I see a child looking at me, I'll smile at them. And they'll smile back, usually. So maybe I'm not that mean. My kids have always told me, you just look so mean that everybody's scared to death of you. Well, I don't mean to look that way. I was just cursed with a face like this. But if we keep our minds immersed in all the evil that's going around us now, how can we expect to be translated into the kingdom of God, into heaven when Jesus comes? We're not going to be ready for it. We're not going to be prepared unless we separate ourselves. Joshua said unto the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Different verses in the Old Testament said that. I thought I had another one there, but I don't. But sanctify thyself against tomorrow. You know, when the Lord was going to meet, when he was going to do something, that was the order, sanctify yourself. What does that mean? Well, it means, in a general sense, to cleanse, to purify, or to make holy. And then it means to separate. Separate. Whenever Korah and Miriam and all of them rebelled against Moses, they were called out. Moses said, everybody that's on the Lord's side, you better come over here. Joshua separated everybody out. Said, who's on the Lord's side? Well, when Korah and them, when they moved over, the earth opened up and swallowed them. Didn't swallow up the people that weren't with them, that said, we're not a part of this. I want the Lord to know today that I'm not a part of this. I'm not a part of this. Do you? Do you want it to be clear, like I read to you Wednesday night about the African, I believe it was the African pastor, who said, when the Lord comes, my banner will be clear. Ain't going to be no doubt. He won't have to ask anybody or wonder about me, because I've made it clear who I am, who I belong to, and what I'm going to live in this world. Whenever some great event was about to happen, God had warned the people to sanctify themselves. So that's what we need to do here on the eve of the Lord's coming. This is what we must do if we believe Jesus is coming and this thing is about over. To prepare to meet him, it must include separating ourselves from seeing and hearing and thinking all the evil that's eating this world like a cancer. 1 John chapter 3, verse 3, and every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. So before the sons of God went into the daughters of men, they didn't think evil all the time. They were the salt of the earth. But universal evil doing and evil thinking always follow the apostasy of the people of God. And then destruction follows shortly thereafter. And I've got some scripture in Ezekiel, but I'm not going to read it. We're out of time. But it just gives another illustration in the Old Testament of the same thing happening. If you read your Bible and you read through the stories and the history of Israel, you will see that it was just like a cycle. This thing happened over and over and over. When they separated themselves unto God and did what God said, all was well. But as soon as they started mixing with everybody around them and they began to look and act and live like the rest of the world, evil and trouble and destruction shortly followed. And down to the bottom they went. And they were carried away captive, and they were subdued and oppressed until they cried to God, and God had sent them a deliverer. And they'd repent, and they'd promise, and they'd sign it on a paper. We're going to live for God, and we're going to keep his commandments. And they'd do it for a while. Then they wouldn't do it anymore. They'd quit. They'd get to looking at all that gold and flashy stuff and Babylonian garments and women, and they's gone again. You're living in that kind of a world, and that's where we're at. So, what's the answer? Sanctify yourselves. If you're not saved, you need to get saved. You need to make sure that you are really a child of God. And if you're not, if you are saved, then you just need to live like it. Amen. Let's stand. Let's stand.